Hello all, welcome to part 31 of the Wireless LAN Security Mega Primer. In this video, we will look at various different EAP types and then dive deep into PEEP. So as we've seen in previous videos, when we use WPA to enterprise, there could be multiple EAP types which we can use for authentication. Now, some of the more popular ones include PEEP, EAP TTLS, EAP TLS, and then you also have LEAP and EAP FAST, which are proprietary solutions. Now, if you look at the real world usage, PEEP definitely tops it all. And the simple reason is Windows, which is probably the most used operating system in the world, has native PEEP integration shipped with every single copy of the operating system. So very quickly, what is PEEP? Well, PEEP stands for Protected Extensible Authentication Protocol, and basically there are two different versions of PEEP. The first one is called PEEP v0, which actually uses EAP MSCHAP v2 as the actual authentication protocol within the TLS tunnel which is created in PEEP version 0. Now, the interesting thing is that PEEP version 0 has native support in Windows by default, and this is what has really contributed to its popularity. And many network administrators, when you tell them, well, PEEP, they actually mean PEEP version 0, which goes ahead and uses MSCHAP v2. Now, there is another version of PEEP also available, which is PEEP v1, which uses EAP GTC or generic tokens. Now, this is not as popular as the MSCHAP v2 one with native integration in Windows. There are other, I would say, types as well which are available. Basically, the inner authentication protocol could even be EAP SIM. Now, the typical way PEEP provides security is by using server-side certificates with which the server authenticates itself to the client. There is also a version of PEEP created by Microsoft called PEEP EAP TLS, which also goes ahead and mandates the use of client-side certificates or smart card. However, this remains a proprietary solution and is not as popular as the PEEP v0 using MSCHAP v2. So very quick breakdown of PEEP. Now when we do the actual experiment, you would see all the packets flying back and forth. And to be honest, most of the different EAP types is more of encryption rather than wireless security, where you would have to be familiar with how PKI works, how the certificate negotiation happens and things like that. I would probably plan to take that up separately in a session where we would look at SSL and many of these certificate-oriented authentication and encryption-based protocols. Anyway, but very broadly, what happens is that before the client sends any of its credentials using MSCHAP v2, a TLS tunnel is created. Now, this is an end-to-end tunnel between the Radius server and the client, facilitated via the access point, which ensures that everything going between them is encrypted. Now, within this encrypted tunnel, MSCHAP v2 is actually used as the protocol to authenticate the user on the wireless client to the Radius server. If this succeeds, then the Radius server goes ahead and sends an EAP success to the access point, which in turn relays that to the client. And post that, you have the key negotiation, which happens using the original WPA stuff, which we've visited in previous videos, right? So we'll come to the weaknesses, etc. when we do the actual demo. The other EAP type, which is very popular, is EAP TTLS. And from a security standpoint, this is practically as good as PEEP. This is more of an open standard, and hence slowly the industry is moving towards adoption of EAP TTLS. The point to note here is EAP TTLS optionally allows even the client to use a certificate to validate itself to the server. This is an actual increase in security, because even if a hacker or an attacker would find the credentials of the client which it uses to log on to the network, then still he would not be able to actually break into the wireless network till the time he does not possess the certificate which the client has. Now the only issue is there is no native support available for Windows. You could of course use third-party utilities to use EAP TTLS on Windows. However, OS X actually provides a native support. There are two versions, V0 and V1. Then we have EAP TLS, which is probably the most secure of all EAP types. And the reason for this security is that it mandates the use of both server and client-side certificates. Now, as you can imagine, because certificate management and distribution is such a gruesomely painful task, this has contributed to EAP TLS actually not being as popular with administrators. Now, in a typical EAP TLS, what happens is, please note that all of these images which is there, the source is layer3.wordpress.com. I haven't created it, just found them with Google image search. So all credits goes to the blog down there, which you can even visit. Coming back, so basically here what happens is, apart from the servers validating, sending its own certificate and validating its identity to the client also in turn has to go ahead and authenticate itself to the server using its certificate. And then after that, you could have any other inner authentication protocol if required. Now, post this, you typically have the WP authentication. Then we come to Leap, which is a lightweight extensible authentication protocol created by Cisco Systems. To be frank, Leap is practically obsolete now. Nobody uses it because of the various vulnerabilities which were found. Most notably, that Leap was vulnerable to a dictionary attack via eavesdropping. Now, what Leap used to use was basically a modified version of MS-CHAP for authentication. Cisco themselves now recommend that you should move from Leap to Leap EAP Fast, which is the replacement for Leap. So how does Cisco Leap work? Well, it's basically a challenge response protocol where you go ahead and have the radius send the challenge, the client satisfies with the appropriate response, and then authentication happens. And if you remember, similar to the EAP MD5 case, all of this was going out in absolute plain text over the air, which made it very easy for someone to eavesdrop and launch a dictionary attack. Okay, then finally came EAP Fast, which is touted as a replacement for Leap by Cisco. EAP Fast actually goes ahead and uses server-side certificates, even though they are optional. Now, the way EAP Fast provides the security is by using something called PAC, which is nothing but Protected Access Credential, to create the initial TLS tunnel. Now, this provisioning of the PAC can either be manual or can happen automatically. And once the PAC is available with the client, it can create a TLS tunnel inside which other inner authentication protocols can be used and authentication can happen. It's important to note that automatic PAC provisioning is vulnerable to, susceptible to an interception attack, and at the very same time, like what we saw for EAP MD5, it is very simple for an attacker to create a honeypot to lure a client to connect to it and to force it to update to a new PAC. And once the client tries to authenticate using probably MS-CHAP v2 or something similar, inside the TLS tunnel created with the forged PAC or the spoofed PAC sent by the attacker's honeypot, then once again the old brute force attacks still come into picture. Okay, concluding, this is how using the PAC TLS tunnel would be created, and then after that some inner authentication protocol would be used to exchange the credential data and authenticate the client, right? And then On success, basically, a session key would be derived and traffic would go about. So now let's get back. So we've looked at a lot of different EAP types. Frankly, there are tons of more EAP types. And this is where what we will do is we will concentrate on the most important one, which is PEEP, and look at how PEEP can be compromised because of various configuration issues. Now in this video, we will just look at how to set up PEEP, authenticate our client to the Radius server via the access point, and that's about it, right? And in the next video, we will look at how we can actually attack a PEEP installation. As far as the other EAP types are concerned, I really do not see much of a reason to take up every single EAP type because most of the attacks are pretty common to many of them. And at the very same time, many of them hardly have any deployments around, right? But I may take them up from time to time. But I think as far as WPA Enterprise is concerned, PEEP probably alone justifies over 85% of installations, at least in my opinion, right? Okay, great. So now let's go to our demonstration. Let's go to our backtrack machine. So this is the exact same machine we've used for our EAP MD5 demo, and hence when you open up eap.conf, you will still find that the default EAP type is set to MD5. Let's change this and make it PEEP. This is the first step. If all of this is confusing, please go back to the previous videos about how to set up EAP MD5 and do the demo. That will clear things up. Then what we'll do right now is start the Radius server with PEEP as the preferred configuration. Now what we'll do is let's go back to our wireless client and let's go ahead and create a new profile to connect to this network. So we'll just wait for a second and we'll go to advanced 802.1x and let me go ahead and create a new profile. And what we can actually do is add a new profile called PEEP demo, right? And within this we'll say prompt for username and password, and our preferred method would be PEEP. Now here there is something interesting. If you remember, in the very first packets which goes out, we actually have the identity, which was security tube or whatever we were using, going out in plain text. Here we can set up something where the outer identity and the inner identity within the TLS tunnel would be different. So this could just be some arbitrary name which probably doesn't even exist in the network. So let's say you can just use Pond, and the wireless network you'd probably want to use this with would be security tube, right? So we'll continue with that. Also what we'll do is we'll remove our previous one which I had created. Security tube, WPA Enterprise, and only PEEP is there, right? So let's go ahead, click OK on this, apply, and now let's connect to our network. So you would notice immediately it goes ahead and asks for a username and password. So we'll go ahead and give it what we'd created, security tube demo 12345, and we are connecting. And if you notice, we've successfully connected to the security tube network, right? If we go back to our machine, you would actually notice that security tube was what was used, and basically the connection has succeeded, right? So let's go back to our slides. Actually, no, what we're going to do is let's go back and launch Wireshark so that we can go through this process a little bit more in detail. And what we're going to do is we're going to sniff on the ETH1 interface, which is where all the packets are coming through between the access point and the Radius server. And we are also going to go ahead and create our little wireless interface. I've just plugged my card in. Right, don't worry about this little message here. I was just trying to feed it a couple of keys to do something with SSL. And what we are going to do now is to first check if, I think we'll have to include the USB device. Momentarily, we should probably see this inside our VM. This is a good sign, because if there is a wait, it actually means the interface is just about to come up. Okay, let's go ahead and create a monitor mode interface. Oops. And let's go ahead and put this on channel 1, because we remember that's the channel where our AP is, right? And now let's launch another Wireshark instance. And this time we are going to monitor Mon0. And if you remember, what we really care about in both cases is just the EAP packets. Let's go back here, and once again, let's actually just have this for EAP packets. Now we can go back to our original machine, probably just quickly disconnect by maybe even just connecting away, and then coming back again, turn airport on. Right, this may by default very quickly connect to security tube, and we would be able to see a lot of messages here, right? So let's actually look at what's happened on the wireless side. So if you notice, the first thing is the response identity packet. Actually, there's a little bit of a, let's just go ahead and stop this for a second, right? First, you would typically have the requests and the responses coming in, and if you notice, let me just run through these packets a little bit here and there. Okay, I think it may be a good idea to just restart this process very quickly by first bringing the interface down. Just go ahead and connect to my home network, and let me just restart the whole sniffing process. Getting a clean trace in wireless is a pain. Is a big pain, right? Okay, and let's go to ETH1 and just do the same here as well. Now let's go back to our machine, generate a clean trace. Right, go back here, and now basically we would be able to see all the packets going both through the wireless as well as the wired side interface. Right, now probably it's not worthwhile going through each and every single packet, right? So what we are really concerned about is, if you notice, some packets also seem to be missing here and there, but the whole idea is that first basically the TLS tunnel would be created, and then after that there would be data which should be going from the client to the Radius server through this TLS tunnel, and this would actually contain all the credentials and things like that which are going. And finally, after authentication succeeds, the access point sends a EAP success. Now on the other side, what we would basically have is a set of Radius packets, inside which we have all the data sent by the client encapsulated. So fine, most of the data which is useful to us here, right? And this is how all the data goes through. And if you remember the previous videos, finally it sends a radius accept message to the access point, which in turn now knows that authentication has succeeded, and then it sends an EAP success message to the client. And after that we would have a lot of other things, which is sending the data across and things like that, which if we just go ahead and clear the whole filter, you would notice that after that we have all the key management packets which are going through, right? If you remember the whole handshake and things like that, right? Some packets seem to be missing from the trace, but you get the idea. So I think this was a very simple demonstration of how to probably get started with PEEP. I'm not going into each and every packet, because as I said, then it's more to do with how certificates work and what is PKI and how the public key certificate blah 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 etc. can be used to create the TLS and whatnot. And this is beyond the scope. Probably what you would require more is a crypto mega primer on certificates and how they are used in various circumstances. But the key takeaway from a wireless perspective is that the access point is relaying all these packets, allowing for the creation of this TLS tunnel, through which credentials are being passed in an encrypted form, because of which we are unable to see the actual values going through. If you remember in EAP MD5, it was very simple to just sniff the packets off the air, take the challenge, take the response, feed it to ASLEAP and actually get the output. Sorry, feed it to EAP MD5 pass and actually get the output. But in this case, it isn't that simple, simply because everything is encrypted, right? So that's all for this video. In the next video, we will look at how to use free radius WPE to go ahead and compromise PEEP security because of various misconfigurations on the client. That's all for this video. Thank you.